Welcome to Inspire Change, a new inspirational and motivational broadcast that strives to empower, educate, and inspire men in a positive way. Please join me in welcoming Gunter, international psychologist, author, speaker, and producer.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Inspired Change. So, we've seen another week go by, and global news has been extraordinarily interesting. Not that I'm going to focus on global news, but what I want to do is I want to continue our conversation about how individual well-being is intricately intertwined with social and cultural well-being. And I'm going to take a few examples and I'm going to basically roll those out and critically think about them. And I want to encourage all of you to critically think about them as well, because we are at a crucial historical point in time. We are coming collectively out of the pandemic of COVID-19 and Omicron. And I'm sure that most of us are going to experience some other issues around that sort of virus. I'm not sure that we're really done yet with that, but things look like they're seemingly are going to return back to normal as much as possible. So what about the rest of the news? Well, here we have on the Eastern Front in Europe, Russia, or let me put it this way, Putin banging away at a Democratic Republic of Ukraine, who is and wants to be seen as a significant part of Europe. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is that the continuing political conflict in the United States, the UK, and in Australia is also taking place. Now, why is this relevant? Well, when we talk about the concept of well-being, one of the things that we need to consider is what takes us away from our sense of well-being. What is it that impinges on that? And in the last couple of episodes, I've talked about the issue of fragmentation. So in one episode, I talked about individual psychological fragmentation and how that sort of works in a very brief sort of two-dimensional overview. And I want to take that further into the concept of what happens when a society or a culture is fragmented. And so, how does that represent itself? How do we see our society fragmented? Well, for the first part of it, as I said earlier on, was the idea that there's an us and them. Okay, and you can put that us and them into all sorts of different categories. So we've got gender us and thems, we've got religious us and thems, we've got political us and thems, and so on. We can roll that ball almost ad infinitum. We can just keep going with that thing. Okay, and so in each level, at each point of binary thinking about us, we establish tension. We establish anxiety. Okay, so when I was watching the sort of news on the Ukraine, one of the things that was happening for me was watching people, and not that we get to see a lot of these people. I'd really love to see not just Ukrainians, but Russians have an opportunity to express what they think and feel about what's going on, especially those who are under the thrall of a strong man like Putin. And we are talking about the patriarch. There's no accident that when Putin really came into power, one of the things that he allied himself with was the Russian Orthodox Church. That historically has been a perpetual relationship alliance between the rulers, the supposedly secular rulers, and the church. It's an alliance. Some people might refer to this as an unholy alliance for obvious reasons. Because is it that the church keeping the rulers in power or the rulers are keeping the church in power? It becomes a bit of a twixt conversation around this issue. And technically speaking, one would think that religion would attach itself to a higher purpose, a higher level of meaning, attributing guidance and morality to a population. Well, again, history tells us that that's probably not generally the case at all. So what am I saying? Well, at the moment, what we're seeing globally, especially in both the West and with the meddling of the Eastern Bloc in foreign affairs, is that we constantly are getting pushed to fragment. And anyone who wants to take this further just needs to look at, follow the money. It's the money trail that gives us an idea about where some of that push is really coming from. So what do we do in a supposedly free democratic environment? Well, the first thing that I think that we need to do is we need to hold our politicians and our leaders to account. And that's not only the case within politics, that's also in the realm of business. The question is, is there such a thing as a moral business, an ethical business? And most people would immediately sort of go, well, yes, there is. Except that when we scratch the surface, that doesn't necessarily always ring true. Businesses, corporations will often do unethical and immoral things just as much as politicians will do. One to maintain revenue and the other to maintain political power. Now, some people would argue that revenue equals political power, and we could certainly see this in places where, we're not really talking about a democracy, but we're really talking more about an oligarchy or a hegemony, or, just simply vested interest groups running politicians. And this is where politics can get really dirty. And so the second bit that I want to talk about is that if we're going to combat this, and I want everybody to think about this especially clearly, is that we need to hold not just each other, but the people that we vote for up to scrutiny. We need to hold them accountable. And if they do not act ethically, morally, then we have the power. And this is the power of the vote, to vote them out. But, unlike Australia, a lot of places do not have a compulsory vote. Now, Australia has a compulsory vote because we recognise very clearly early on that, sometimes people need to have a bit of a nudge. We can't call ourselves a democracy if only a third or, 49% of the population votes. That's not a democracy. So that's particularly important. But how do we really get down to make these sorts of decisions in terms of what's accountability and what's, the place where we can steer towards? So the third element is that we need to think about things long term. So if I go from the individual level to a broader picture, like, a community, a society, a country, a nation, if I'm an individual and if I do things that are only short-term focused, then somewhere along the line, long-term, I'm going to pay the price. And my argument is that patriarchy and neoliberalism has set us on a course wherein we are facing the storm. We are facing the fact that we're going to have to pay the piper. Our climate policies, our social policies, and so on are taking us very much, in my view, to the brink. And essentially, we as individuals are like the canaries in the mine. And to be frank, we're not chirping that nicely. Some of us are falling off the perch a lot earlier than what we're supposed to. And if we look at certain minorities, then it gets even worse. I mean, in Australia, the overall health of the Indigenous population here and the problems that they face are significantly worse than what even the underprivileged white community faces. And so, if I come back to the canary in the mine analogy, is, there's some stuff going on, but no one's really listening. Now, historically, if I go back as a culture, if we go back to the hunter-gatherers, we were healthier, more content, and probably less aggressive. In fact, the archaeological evidence doesn't really support that hunter-gatherers were rampant hawks, that they went to war at the drop of a hat. In fact, when you're in small groups, small populations, the way to survive, as I've often talked about, is through cooperation, and you need a sort of flatter hierarchy. You need to be more flexible in terms of who does what, where, when, and how. Okay? So if I go back to the iceberg model and examining issues, whether they are individual or social, then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask myself the question, what's happening right now? Well, what's happening right now is that both our physical and mental health statistics, especially for men, are not good. So we need to do something somewhat different. Are there patterns to this? And what has been happening over time? So yes, we are getting better with gender issues, but our socioeconomic issues are not improving, actually. They're improving for the 1 to 5%, not a question. There's been more billionaires popping up in the system in the last 15 to 20 years than ever before. The concentration of wealth amongst a very small population globally is just gone up exponentially. But the other thing too is that we're seeing, an analysis where certain things are accredited to individuals when we should be looking at them from a social cultural position. So what am I talking about? One of the things as a psychologist that I often have to deal with is bullying. And there's been some research going on that has determined that one of the main predictors of bullying in an organisation is in fact its culture. It's not the individual who's slightly deranged from the rest and sociopathic and pathological on that level. It is a whole culture. Now, despite what Margaret Thatcher said when she articulated the idea that there is no society, there is society, there is culture. It determines or has a major impact on what individuals do. Now, my view is that a really decent buffer to that level of influence of culture onto the individual is through education, not just academically, but morally, ethically, and emotionally. We talk about in psychology about, intelligence, IQ, EQ, emotional intelligence, and SQ, social intelligence. They're some of the building stones that really, really need to look at and foster in raising. We need to promote, growth in that area and evolution. Not necessarily a revolution. That sucker usually gets us into more trouble than what it's worth. But we really do need to individually and culturally evolve. Now, we keep taking steps forward, but then these strong men pop up, or, people like Trump or Boris Johnson, who drag us collectively back. Now, it's not just them as an individual. What it is a particular culture in a society that allows these people to flourish. And it's time we made a break from that. And part of the first step in making a break from it is to deconstruct patriarchy. And the next step is to dismantle the neoliberal agenda. We need to really get into looking at how we can bring our community and our society together. And part of that is focusing on a reasonable access to a quality of life for everybody, not just some or a few. And these days, the middle class is becoming more few than middle class major. Okay, so that's a really important thing to keep in mind. And all of us contribute to either the problem or the solution in our own way. One of the things that frustrates me with the bullying issue is that, again, I'm there, picking up with the individual, and helping them with their psychological symptoms and injury. And then they're still in this toxic environment where, now often the response is, well, we'll put them on a performance plan. Hang on a minute, the individual's not the problem. The culture's the problem. Fix the culture. And having, access to wellness programs for the individual and meditation courses and mindful courses is not a solution. In fact, it's masking the problem. As an executive in a situation like that, the moment I see a certain number of people showing signs of stress, like the canaries in the mine, I would begin to do a systemic audit. I would start to look at how we work together. What are the values that are being expressed? Not the ones that we espouse. I mean, everybody likes to wax lyrically about, kindness, generosity, sharing, distribution, paying attention to results, blah, 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 blah. But what's actually happening on the coalface? i.e., what is happening in the mine, not on top. Those two things are often very, very different. And until we really acknowledge it, put something in practice that's going to address this, we are going to continue to fragment. And the fragmentation will increase tension, and ultimately it'll boil over. So, as Nick Hanauer puts it, plutocrats beware. It's no longer a safe space. And I don't condone violence. We can change this in a, inclusive, intentionally compassionate, tolerant way that provides people that sense of being part of something greater that they're working towards, and is rewarding to have all of us a sense of purpose within the bigger picture. Okay. Really, really want to encourage everybody to put some food for thought into the machine. Let it grind away. Allow yourself to think this thing through. Don't go for the sound bites. Don't just gravitate to one source of information. Scan it. Think. We're only as good as the way that we think, right? But we tell ourselves some stories. Like Yuval Harari says, one of the things that sets us apart is we're great storytellers. But some of these stories are actually horror stories that have been dressed up in a positive, shiny, shiny way that everyone gets mesmerized by. And ultimately, it has the potential to sink us. Okay, until next time, this is me signing off.
Gunter Swoboda does individual and group coaching for men looking to grow. For more information on this and the global Making Good Men Great movement, check out goodmengreat.com. If you have a topic for the show or would like to be a guest on the air, please email miranda@nortainment.com. That's miranda@NOIRTAINMENT.com. Thank you, and always keep inspiring change.